Right, what is up YouTube? Hope you're all good. As you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to take you through leg day today, which is my first leg day of the week. I would say it's a bit more of a quad focused one, but thinking about it, it's probably somewhat even. I start the session pretty much with like biceps, calves, and then line hamstring curls, like I do with pretty much almost. No, my other leg session I do start with adductor instead, and then I do stiff legs first. So I do start both leg days with biceps, and then I do start them with hamstrings pretty much as well. So I guess you could say I'm sort of biasing my hamstrings with both of the leg days that I do, but hamstrings are weaker in comparison to my quads, so that's not a bad thing. In terms of what we've got on the card today, like I said, start with some biceps. I've been doing, instead of doing the 2 sets of dumbbell hammer curls, then 3 sets of cable Bayesian curls. I'm trialing out doing 3 sets of dumbbell hammers and then doing 2 sets of the cable Bayesians, mainly because it's quite hard to get on the cables that I want for the cable Bayesians, and I don't want to be waiting around for them. So I'd rather do some extra sets with dumbbells, with the hammer curls, because I'm not waiting around for the dumbbells ever, pretty much. Whereas with the cables, you've kind of got to get that perfect window where no one's on it, otherwise you're sort of waiting like, you can be waiting up to 5 minutes for the cables you want, which is not what you want, because then your biceps lose the pump and you spend more time in the gym than you need. Which, although I love the gym, I don't want to be spending time in there not actually training, so that's why. After that, then moving on to the calf press, 2 sets on there as usual. Then the rest of the stuff I'll talk you through in the voiceover, you can get an idea of it. In terms of what I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing my pre-workout walk on the walking pad, which has now been moved up to my bedroom, because when I wanted to use it before, my sister was downstairs revising for exams and I don't want to make a racket, so I moved it up to my bedroom. That is a good thing about a walking pad. You literally just need to plug it in and you can move it anywhere. It's proper handy. So yeah, doing about a 10-minute walk just to get my pre-workout meal digested, so I'm not as bloated in the gym and I can just lock in, not have to think about trying to keep all my food down, which I've been there before, especially if you eat too close to each session, that can ruin you. I remember back when I was younger, when I was like 16 and I was dirty bulking per se, I would have like a 1,000 calorie bowl of pasta, not even any protein with it, just probably like a 500 gram of pasta, like a penne or something, and I would eat that with a load of like pasta sauce, maybe 20 minutes before leg days. Why I did this, I guess I had no idea. I guess I thought the more calories that I'd have, the more energy and the better I'd perform, without realising that if I eat too many calories too soon to the session, they would come back out the wrong way. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. I remember back when I used to do that, probably within about 30 minutes of me finishing that meal, I would have my top set on deadlifts ready to go. And sometimes I wouldn't have even been able to finish the set. I would just start throwing up, which is, yeah, definitely not ideal. So don't do that. Space out your pre-workout meal. So I personally now like to give it at least 2 hours. So I'll eat, say I get into the gym for 7 o'clock. I'll try and finish my pre-workout meal maybe just after 5. So just below 2 hours roughly. That'll give it enough time to digest. So that way when you actually go to train, the blood's not in your stomach actually digesting the food. It can go to the working muscles that you want, which will obviously mean that you can perform better. So definitely pay attention to that. I'm doing this session at King's like I normally do, but I need to go a different way there because I need to pick up a scale, because my scale stopped working last night at like 11 o'clock when I was trying to eat my last meal, which certainly wasn't ideal because I had to weigh out like 30 grams of jam with one of those scales that don't have the exact number. It's just got like a little stick that tells you, pinpoints it between like 40 and 60 grams or something, and you've got to try and figure it out. It's, yeah, not ideal. So I've ordered more scales so that doesn't happen again. But yeah, aside from that, everything's going pretty well. Just eating and training and working. Just Groundhog Day. But that's what gets results, so that is what must be done. I think a lot of things that holds a lot of people from making the progress that they want, especially if you're more naturally a skinnier guy, struggle to put on weight, just tend to burn through it all, similar to myself. If you're not consistently eating, if you've not got like a set meal plan where you're having, let's say, 5 meals per day, the same meals pretty much, well, you can vary it on training days and rest days and stuff, but like a consistent set amount of macronutrients, if you're not hitting that, unlucky mate, you're probably not going to make the progress that you want. You really can't wing it when it comes to this stuff. You need to have everything prepped, because otherwise you'll miss a meal, and that could put you out of your surplus for that week, especially if that's a big meal in which you miss, or especially if you miss that meal and then you do more activity on that day without meaning to. Yeah, it's not going to work out too well for you in the long run in terms of making gains. So bear that in mind, get all your meals in, Don't make any excuses. Oh, I was here, there and everywhere. I have literally ate meals at the top of Mount Snowdon. I've ate meals in the car on the way to work. I've heated up meals at the service station on motorways in microwaves that are designed for babies to get their milk heating up. I've got meals in pretty much every scenario which you can imagine. I remember one time I was in the car with someone, I was driving, and we were on the motorway and it was time for me to eat a meal. And we needed to get to somewhere, we didn't have time to stop. So they fed me my meal, spoon fed, yeah. Get your meals in, no matter what, if you want to make progress, that is. So, yeah, I'll catch you in the gym. Adios. Right, first things first, apologies for this clip being shown in portrait as opposed to landscape, how all the others will be. I feel like it's been quite a while since I've actually recorded a YouTube vid, so I'm used to filming all my training portrait as I normally post on my Instagram that way. Obviously, because I don't want to post on Instagram in a landscape because that wouldn't fit the grid or anything like that. But regardless, I am going to leave the clip in so you can all see me do my hammer curls. As I previously mentioned on my pre-workout walk on the walking pad, I'm doing 3 sets on these as opposed to 2 like I used to do. Which, if you do look at it from a very sciencey technical standpoint, dumbbell hammer curls do bias the shorten range, which does provide less damage to the muscle than the lengthen range, which the cable Bayesian curls bias. Which will technically improve my recovery, as I've noticed my biceps haven't been recovering the best as of late. However, the main reason is that I can literally never get on that cable, whereas I can always get on dumbbells, so it just makes more sense from a time efficiency standpoint. So to sum it up, I did 3 sets of these. I did my first set with the 20s, and then I did my second set with the 17.5s, and then my third set with the 15s. With the 20s, I think I got 6. Then with the 17.5s, I think I got 9 if you count the reps that I took from the rest pause, which I'll explain in a second. And then with the 15s, I think I got 11 if you count the reps that I took with the rest pause as well. So what I mean by a rest pause is basically when you take the movement to failure and then you sort of stop for maybe like 10 seconds or so. I definitely didn't do 10 seconds, I took like 3 here, maybe 5 actually thinking about it. And then you go again, try to get an extra couple reps, and it's basically just like an intensifier technique. Now, I hardly ever do rest pause sets or drop sets or any sort of intensifier technique anymore. I usually just do straight sets. However, I noticed my grip was slipping on these, and I basically just went to get the same amount of reps that I did last week. So I just sort of popped it down for a second, re-got my grip back in place, and just went again. But yeah, all 3 sets went pretty well. After that, swiftly moved on to the cable Bayesian curls. And the main cable that I used to love doing them on has now gone. It's been sold. So I have been doing them on a different cable, which has been okay. But I noticed when I was doing them in this session, the cable was sort of like, not stuck, but one side of it, the resistance was like significantly harder. It kept sort of just getting stuck at this one sticking point, which was just throwing off my whole set. So I switched the cable next to it and I did 2 sets single arm, which probably felt better actually. I think I'm going to keep them in single arm going forward, just because I can almost focus more on that singular bicep working as opposed to both of them at the same time. And it doesn't really take up much more time through my session, because in the time that I would be resting if I was doing them dual arm, I can sort of just do the single arm one here, and because it's biceps, it's only one small movement. It'd be a little bit different if I was doing, let's say, a single leg extension where my quads are a big big muscle. So there will be quite a significant amount of oxygen debt that needs to be repaid in between each set before I jump straight into the opposite side, in order to perform my best, that is. So once I'd wrapped that up, we then moved on to 2 sets of the calf press, which felt pretty good. Now, I don't know if you can see here, but I have actually got a seat belt on this. I've strapped myself to the machine, which is going to be a bit of a theme throughout these leg sessions, because I've noticed the seat belt has made a significant difference to my leg training. It's definitely helped me keep my hips glued to the seat and preventing my body rising up on certain movements as the sets get hard, which as a result means I can keep more tension on the working muscles as opposed to other muscles that want to take over. And it also kind of acts like a bit of a belt for me to brace my core against, especially on like the pendulum squat, for example. It feels significantly better. After we boxed off calves, I've moved on to the line hamstring curl as per usual. The reason I'm doing this exercise first before any of my quad movements is primarily so I can bring up my hamstrings, because they are lacking in development as opposed to my quads. And this is also going to allow me to warm up my knee joint before I move into any of my compound movements like the hack squat, which, given the fact my knee is not in the best condition at the moment, it does play up quite frequently.
it's very important that I get my knee warm before I move into that exercise in particular, or any sort of quad compound movement where my knees tend to give me a bit of grief. So yeah, 3 sets on here, each of them pyramiding down in weight and up in reps. And I've also got the seat belt on this exercise, strapping my lower back down towards the pad, which definitely helps me keep my quads more glued towards the leg pad and therefore keep more tension on my hamstrings, as opposed to allowing my lower back to take over the movement, which in the past it definitely has done and results in my lower back just being thrashed before RDLs primarily, and just means I get less out of this exercise. However, due to me using the seat belt and therefore being more accurate with the movement in terms of loading it on my hamstring, that has definitely made it more challenging. So the weight that I was previously using was definitely too heavy now, so I only managed to get 4 reps on the top set, which for a lying hamstring curl is definitely too heavy. Ideally, I don't ever want to be dropping below like 6 or 7 reps or so on here. So next week I will be backing the weight down a touch till I'm working in a little bit of a higher rep range, and then gradually work my strength back up while using the seat belt and being more accurate. But that'll probably be a bit of a slower process because, like I said, it's making the movement more challenging. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing at all though. If you make an exercise more difficult by either changing the tempo in which you execute the reps at, by you changing the setup so that it's more accurate on the muscle, it doesn't matter that you might be using less weight as opposed to how you were previously. Because in terms of actual tension that's being placed on the target muscle that you're trying to work, there's going to be more tension. So you'll be getting just as much of a stimulus out of the movement, but you'll be generating less systemic fatigue and placing less tension on other muscles that you aren't trying to specifically target with that exercise. So definitely make a note of that. Then after I had wrapped up my 3 sets on the lying leg curl, we then moving on to 3 sets of the leg extension. And same again, I am using my seat belt on this exercise so I can keep my hips strapped down to the pad and kind of brace against it a little bit. And straps are also being used here, so once again I can keep my body fully strapped down, because as the set goes on with leg extensions, it becomes increasingly difficult to fully shorten your quad by extending your knee joint. What you'll find will probably happen is, as it starts to get difficult, your hips will start to slightly rise off the pad, and you still might feel like you're fully locking your knee out. However, due to your hips starting to rise off the pad, the quad isn't being fully contracted, so you aren't getting as much out of the movement as you could be. And by having the seat belt strap your hips down to the pad, that problem is pretty much fully avoided, and it makes the exercise absolutely disgustingly painful, more so than it was previously without the seat belt. Which, if anyone has done a proper set on a leg extension, you'll know just how painful it is when you do take it to failure. It's definitely the main exercise where people do just tap out solely due to pain. But the more you take these sets to absolute failure, the more of a pain tolerance you tend to actually build up. And what I mean by that is it will still be just as painful every time you do it. That won't get any less painful. However, you'll just get more resilient at actually working through the pain. Your body will physically adapt, in a sense, to not the pain, but how well it can actually push through it. And if you can take a set of leg extensions to failure, I think you can pretty much take any exercise to failure. You won't really have much of an issue with it, because the leg extension is by far the most painful exercise to take to failure. Lying hamstring curls is definitely up there with it, but in terms of just raw pain that comes through the quads, leg extension is by far the most painful. So yeah, 3 sets on here as usual. Just before I move on to the hack squat, I do this. And I do find, obviously, it does get some more blood through the knee joint, so I definitely go into my sets on the hack squat more warmed up. But I also go into them with definitely a better ability to actually not contract my quad, but definitely use my quad more so than other muscles, like my glutes, for example. And because there's more blood in the quad when I do go into the hack squat, I can sort of shift my posture so that I can actually place more tension onto the quad, in a sense, just through like the way I'm executing it in terms of my foot positioning and just my actual brace. It just tends to feel a lot better, even if I do get slightly fewer reps due to my quads being a bit more fatigued. Now, I went into this set with my knees actually feeling pretty good, to be fair. I did notice on the third, as I was attempting the fourth, I slightly shifted my foot positioning a little bit, and that just slightly threw me off a little bit. I was in a pretty good groove before I did that, so I'll make sure my feet stay planted in place next time going forward, even though I still probably wouldn't have gotten that last rep. It wouldn't have been as brutal of a failure. Second set, I put the same amount of weight on that I did last week, aimed to get 1 rep up, but unfortunately I only just matched the reps, which isn't what I wanted. I did want a rep up, however I executed these pretty well. They're all paused very well. The eccentric is pretty much perfect on every rep, so can't really complain if I have executed them better. And as you can see on the speed of that last rep, there's not a chance in the world I could have gotten another after that. So as a result, I'm pretty happy with it. We are then moving on to RDLs with the dumbbells, as I usually do. So starting out with the top set of 70s, and in terms of how these went okay. I definitely controlled them a little bit more than I did last week, and as a result that made it more difficult. So I only managed 7 on this top set, whereas the last couple of weeks I didn't get an 8. So yeah, not ideal. However, given the fact it's better execution, I will take that. And the goal will be to get 8 next week with the same sort of control on the eccentric that I have had with this set. And watching this back, I also do want to be trying to keep my head a little bit further down, trying to keep my chin a bit more tucked and just keeping my chest proud, which is something that I did better on this second set. As you can see, this is the sort of posture that I want to be keeping throughout basically every single rep. I've pretty much nailed it here actually. But when your brain and your body is absolutely fried from all the other exercises that you've done before this and a full day of work, it's very easy to sort of forget these little cues in the moment. You kind of just want to get psyched up, get into the exercise and get it done very well. So little tweaks to like your positioning, your posture, or position of the dumbbells in terms of your grip, little things like that can slip your mind, unfortunately, and result in you not executing the set as good as you could do. But in spite of this, I'm pretty happy with how the session went. So next week, we will aim to just do it better.
Right, yes guys. Just finished up legs. Well, finished legs about maybe 25 minutes ago. That's very precise, but 25 minutes ago. In terms of how the session went, I covered most of that in the voiceover, so I'm not going to draw on too much about that. I'm just still a little bit gutted that I didn't manage to get abs done. But out of every exercise that I could have not got done, that is probably the one which will be the least impactful, because I'm literally just going to do it tomorrow on my rest day. It's not really that big of a deal. I'm hitting abs at the end of my leg session. If anything, they'll probably go better because I'll be able to hit them fresh before doing a full leg session prior to it. So yeah, not the end of the world. The rest of the session went pretty well. Just standard stuff really. It wasn't a spectacular session. It definitely wasn't a bad session by any means. It was just a pretty good session. Got a great connection with everything. Knee didn't feel like it was flaring up whatsoever. Can't complain. Just a good session. The only drawback was the fact that I got into the gym later than usual because I had to pick up a package from Argos on my way, which meant I had to take a detour, which meant that I got stuck behind loads of temporary lights and ended up getting to the gym like 20 minutes later than I normally would have liked to because of all those stupid temporary lights. Well, they're not stupid, they are, I guess, necessary if you do need to, do the roads up or whatever they decide to do. So yeah, pretty happy with that. I've also just been hit on by a blunk in the petrol station, which is a new experience. I've never had that happen before. Didn't really know how to react. I just sort of, I guess, thanked him and went about my day. Bit of an odd one. So yeah, I'm actually feeling somewhat hungry for my post-workout meal, which is actually quite a relief because for all my other meals today, I've not felt hungry whatsoever really, especially my pre-workout meal. I did not really want to eat that at all, but I still got it down, of course, because that's what's required for me to put on the size that I want to put on. So not eating it just because I didn't feel hungry, it's not an option, you know? Gotta stick to the plan as always. So yeah, I'll eat that and then get to bed because I'm knackered. So catch you in the next one. Adios.